So I'd say right now, we don't have a clear indication that there is broader transmission within the community.
There's widespread COVID-19 testing in the Corner Brook area as health officials try to trace the source of a recent case.
And the number of cases there climbs to 8.
Well, it's been a rainy weekend, and unfortunately there's some more on the way.
I applied online, as everyone was informed to do. My application was successful. I waited, as everyone did, to get their ballot. Mine didn't come.
Well, that's one voter who didn't get to vote in this last election.
He's teamed up with the NDP to contest the entire election. What does this latest court action mean?
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. We start tonight with the widespread COVID-19 testing on the West Coast.
Yes, health officials in Western Newfoundland are asking people in the Corner Brook and Bay of Islands North areas to get tested, whether they have symptoms or not. The idea is to determine if there's transmission within the community. Officials made the plea last night after 5 cases were identified in the region over the weekend. By lunchtime today, they said that all of the slots for random tests, about 1,600, had already been filled.
Each person that we've identified has been connected to someone else, has been a close contact. So that's reassuring. So as soon as we can identify people who have a contact, who have a source, that's a good thing. So we haven't yet found people beyond the first individual who we are doing a bit more investigation into who do not have a source. So I'd say right now, we don't have a clear indication that there is broader transmission within the community.
We'll have my full interview with Dr. Monica Dutt in about 25 minutes. There are no new cases of COVID-19 in the province today and no new recoveries. That leaves 10 active cases of the virus. But all but 2 are in Western Newfoundland. The others are in the area covered by Eastern Health. Public Health has also updated 3 cases where the sources were unknown. It says one of those cases has now been traced to travel within Canada. The other 2 remain under investigation.
Well, the NDP is asking the Supreme Court of Newfoundland and Labrador to void the results of the last general election. Not just one district, but all 40 of them. The party filed its application late this afternoon. Here and Now's Mark Quinn is live with that story tonight. Mark.
Yes, Carolyn, the documents were filed just shortly before 4 p.m. and it's the result of what the NDP says it saw and heard during the 10-week marathon election that we've all lived through this winter. The applicants named in the 45-page document are NDP leader Alison Coffin, who ran in St. John's East Kitty-Vitty, and Weimar Whitby, a district resident who says he didn't receive a ballot in time to vote. Some of the irregularities in the application have been reported before, that Elections NL accepted votes over the phone and that the chief electoral officer delivered some ballots by hand. But some of the allegations are new. The document claims Elections NL staff added hundreds of people to the voters list without confirming their identification, that voters said they got ballots for electoral districts they don't live in, and that people who were not on the voters list were issued ballots. The document reads, irregularities happened in all 40 districts and therefore call into question all the results of all the districts. So the action is seeking to overturn not just Coffin's district, but the entire provincial election. Chief Electoral Officer Bruce Chalk declined our request for an interview. Elections NL says it will file a legal response to the court application. Now, late this afternoon, the NDP president and lawyer Kyle Rees spoke with reporters. He said the party didn't file this application because they don't like the outcome of this election. He said it's something they felt compelled to do after hearing from many people who tried to vote but couldn't, and they also heard from whistleblowers at Elections NL who were appalled by what they saw. NDP leader Alison Coffin also spoke today, and she said the ultimate goal of this application is to improve future elections in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Have told us things that make your skin crawl. Things about individuals being added to the voters list and sent however many ballots they like, just by asking. No check to make sure they live in the district, no checks to make sure they're even a real person. They were directed by Elections Newfoundland and Labrador to send people ballots if they requested them.
Everybody in Newfoundland and Labrador has free and full access to make sure their voices are heard and elections are run freely and fairly and in the most democratic style possible. That is the right outcome from this.
Now, Weimar Whitby was also at the NDP's news conference today. He is an eligible voter in the St. John's East Kitty-Vitty district. He tried in numerous ways to get a ballot but never did, and he's named in the application. He talked about why he's speaking out today.
It's incredibly disheartening to hear that there are allegations that people were available or allowed to vote in person on the 25th. Certainly that's not an option that was made available to me, even though I'm relatively close to Elections NL headquarters. But that's not an option that is available to many people. Certainly somebody in Labrador doesn't have the option to show up on the 25th in person and vote when that's not how the majority of people are voting.
Now, the applicants in this matter are both a candidate from St. John's East Kitty-Vitty and a resident from that district, and the application is asking for the results in that district to be rejected and a new election to be called in St. John's East Kitty-Vitty. But the lawyers in this case say that the problems they outline here in these documents were problems that were in many, if not all, of the 40 districts, and they say one possible result could be that a judge rejects the results of the whole provincial election. Reporting live in the newsroom, I'm Mark Quinn for Here and Now.
Well, it was a big day at the House of Assembly. A new Liberal government is now in place with a daunting task ahead of it. But the real drama came late this afternoon with the election of a new Speaker for the House of Assembly. Here now's Terry Roberts is live at Confederation Building and joins us with today's event. So Terry, there was a lot of interest in this position. What happened?
Yeah, Peter, well, as you know, it's tradition that when a new General Assembly is sworn in, the first order of business is to select a new Speaker of the House of Assembly. That's the person who maintains order and decorum in the legislature. And I guess the word is unprecedented. There were no less than five MHAs who put their names forward to be considered for this position. Four of them were Liberals, by the way. On the government side, Derek Bennett, Brian Ward, Sherry Gambin-Walsh, and the incumbent Speaker, by the way, Scott Reid. And also an opposition MHA, PC Paul Dinn, who playfully put his name forward. He was doing a lot of joking around today as the voting was underway. So how this works is you have to get a majority of MHAs to support you by secret ballot in order to win this contest. And that took 2 votes today in order for that to happen. And the winner was Derek Bennett, Lewisport, Twillingate. He's the youngest, by the way, of 15 children. And he said his first message today is that he will not tolerate any bad behavior.
There's times that things get heated, times that people get a little bit excited and a little bit hot, just because you're so passionate about the happenings in your districts and also throughout the province and that. But we always have to keep it respectful to all members of the House. People across Newfoundland and Labrador look upon us as leaders, and we have to lead by example. So I will, as your new Speaker, I will be strictly enforcing that people show respect to each other.
Now you might say this was some vindication today for Derek Bennett. He's a former cabinet minister, but he was left off Andrew Furey's inner circle when cabinet was announced last week. And there's also quite a financial reward for this. MHAs earn about $93,000 a year, but if you're Speaker, you can add about an extra $49,000 onto that. So it's the equivalent of a cabinet minister's salary. And of course, today all started out with the swearing in of 39 MHAs elect. The 50th General Assembly for the province's legislature. Among those taking the oath of office were 5 first-time MHAs, 4 Liberals, and 1 PC. For Premier Andrew Furey, it was his second time being sworn in as the MHA for Humber Gross Mourne in 6 months. Furey said to expect plenty of activity at the House of Assembly this spring. A speech from the throne will take place on Thursday. The legislature will reopen for business on Monday. The Premier is promising what he's calling an aggressive and visionary agenda with a budget planned for June.
This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reset Newfoundland and Labrador for future generations to come. And that will be a true failure if we don't capitalize on this time of disruption, if we let that slip through our fingertips.
Despite the province's dire financial situation, Furey says the budget will be measured and strategic.
There's no one budget that's going to fix the situation we're in. It's taken us 5-10 years to get to the scenario that we're in currently, and it's going to take us that time to get out of it. So there's no one budget that's going to fix everything.
Now, Andrew Furey says the priority for his new government is to lower those punishing debt payments, which right now are second only in line item expenditures to health care. Meanwhile, as we mentioned, 39 MHAs were sworn in today. There's actually should be 40, but John Abbott, he was not sworn in. Mr. Abbott, of course, won a narrow victory over NDP leader Alison Coffin in St. John's East Kitty Vitty, but the official count on that is still up in the air because there's a recount pending before the Supreme Court. Reporting live from Confederation Building, I'm Terry Roberts for Here and Now.
Well, it kind of felt like the rain didn't end at all for the last week or so. That certainly has been the case, but it's been really rainy for the last couple of days. Since April 9th or since Friday, we've seen 105.4 millimeters of rain in the St. John's area, 139 millimeters so far this April. And the record is actually 260 millimeters, but our average is 96. So we're above average for sure, but we're pretty far away from the record from April of 1951. Now, taking a look at the other precipitation totals, this includes the freezing rain and the melted snow that happened across the region as we were going through the day on Saturday. Anywhere from 60 to 105 millimeters of rain, and that is thanks to that area of low pressure that's been sitting south of us. I'll get into those details, tell you how much more rain is on the way when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Parts of Labrador are seeing next to no polar bears in areas usually teeming with the animals at this time of year. It's the time of year when the community of Black Tickle would already have seen 20 or so polar bears, like you're seeing in some of this archival video, but this year, not a single sighting. The island off the south coast is a regular stop for the animals as they move north for the winter. A Canadian ranger who's also a bear guard for the town says the last year they saw 7 bears. The year before that, they saw 72. Ice conditions are partly to blame. We've been covering the lack of ice in our weekly series called Thin Ice. The next installment of that series will be on Thursday. While staying in Labrador, it's been more than a year since people in Rigolet were able to use the gym. The building is connected to the school and was closed when the pandemic first hit the province. It's the only gym in the community of 300 people, meaning popular rec sports like volleyball, floor hockey, and badminton are still on hold. Onukok Charlotte Wolfrey says people there are frustrated and they want school officials to reconsider who's allowed into certain school buildings.
I think that they should look at the different situations and make their decisions based on the situations in the community, not have blanket rules for the whole of Newfoundland and Labrador when it's so different in Labrador than it is in some of the other communities.
Now, Wolfrey says she's spoken with the school's principal and he's looking into whether they'll be allowed to use it again in the summer.
Ferry service between Argentia and North Sydney is on track to resume for the summer season. The summer route was suspended in 2020 due to the pandemic, even while the province was part of the Atlantic bubble. Now, at the time, Marine Atlantic said they weren't seeing the amount of traffic necessary to sustain it. However, for summer 2021, they are intent on bringing back the service. The route traditionally lasts until mid-September. The first North Sydney-Argentia sailing is now scheduled for June 16th, with the first Argentia departure the following day. Well, today, Thomas Whittle was sentenced to 3 years behind bars and a 4-year driving ban. He was found guilty after driving and crashing a snowmobile while impaired, killing his passenger. The crash happened on the west coast of Newfoundland in February 2017. Whittle collided with a taxi van on the bridge to Humber Valley Resort. His 21-year-old passenger, Justin Pollard, died from his injuries. At the sentencing today, the judge said impaired driving is completely unacceptable in our society, and he hoped his ruling sends a message to anyone thinking of drinking and driving. Well, Well, Eastern Health now says anyone over 70 can book a COVID test online, but a lot of people are watching the vaccine rollout, wondering if everyone will really get a shot by Canada Day. And Peter, you've been looking at the vaccination numbers. What can you tell us about it?
Well, Carolyn, the pace of vaccinations has really picked up, even in the last few weeks. Let's take a look at some of the key numbers. So it took almost a month for us to go from no shots to our first 5,000, but the vaccines have really ramped up through March and into April, and we're doing 5,000 doses a day on some days now. In total, 110,000 doses administered. That's 100,000 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who've now had their first shot. So how many days will it take for us to get everyone their first shot? Well, let's take a look at it. The average over the last week or so has been about 4,300 doses a day. So at that pace, it will take 84 days for everyone who's eligible to get their first shot. So that would be July 3rd if the pace stays the exact same it is right now. Now, a lot of people have been wondering, do we have the space and the staff to reach that July 1st goal to have everyone who wants it and eligible vaccinated? Well, right now that does look doable with the current setup, and right now they're not using pharmacists or family doctors to administer the shots.
So, Peter, what would or could change over the next few months that might change that date?
Oh, a lot, Carolyn. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're dependent on how fast the vaccines arrive here. So if a factory goes down, especially with Pfizer, who's delivering the bulk of the shots that we're administering right now, even for a week, that would put us back. But conversely, if we get a pile more doses, for example, right now that's not factoring any Johnson & Johnson doses, this whole process could be sped up. Especially, we are expecting more doses to come in every week into June, for example, but it's certainly something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on.
Okay, well, Peter, have you ever seen speed cubing with a Rubik's Cube, where people solve this puzzle in mere seconds?
I think it would probably take me mere months to solve that problem, Carolyn. It's pretty impressive. There's a worldwide cubing community striving to shave off that time, even milliseconds. But as a Bangladeshi record breaker turned MUN student told our Katie Breen, algorithms are only part of it.
8, 7.
The countdown's on. Competitors get 15 seconds to eye their puzzle. Then
2, 1, start.
The blocks blur. It looks more scrambled than strategy. Solved in under 7 seconds.
Bangladeshi competitions is really crazy, I would say. Like, it doesn't happen in Canada. Like, the fests are really calm. Like, people who are interested, they only come. But in Bangladesh, it's like a festival. Everyone goes, what's happening, what's happening?
Sakibi Blairashid Rivu first broke the record in Bangladesh in 2016. Then he beat his own time 7 times in competition. He got all kinds of attention. News coverage, different write-ups. Everyone wanted to know how he did it.
I used to practice like 7 to 8 hours a day.
What?
I told you.
It's a full-time job.
It's like a full-time job, yeah. I used to do it all the time. Like, I'm eating with one hand and solving with the other.
His record stood in Bangladesh until 2019, a year after he moved to Canada. That's when he retired.
I had to stop cubing because I'm residing in Newfoundland and there is no competition in Newfoundland. Like, no official, unofficial. I was planning to arrange one in 2020, like 2020 last year, but the COVID happened. So I'm still planning to arrange one when the situation is better.
Okay, let's see if he's still got it. I'm gonna mess this up as best I can. Rivu says at one point, he thought anyone who could figure out a cube in under 6 minutes was superhuman. And he just solved it in 10 seconds. He says that serves as motivation in other parts of his life. Whenever he comes across something he doesn't think he can do, he thinks of cubing and how that too looked impossible to him at one point.
So for the first step, you'll need to solve the cross.
Cubers, he says, have a saying. Life is like a Rubik's Cube. You can't address all your problems all at once. You've got to break them into pieces.
And I'm just doing the algorithm and the cube is solved. How I solve Rubik's Cube, that one by one step at a time, and I focus on that step. So in my life, I do the same thing. Like, I just pick one problem, like, okay, I will just solve this one and the next one and the next one, and it's like a staircase, and you just like walk up to the success. That's it.
Katie Breen, CBC News, St. John's.
Wow, practicing 7 or 8 hours a day. And Peter, did you know he's memorized almost 80 different algorithms to be able to solve that puzzle so quickly? How are you doing over there?
Well, that item was almost 3 minutes long, and I've got part of a side done.
All right.
So I don't know how your brain can register those moves so fast. I'm definitely not quitting my day job anytime soon.
Incredible.
Yep, it's still rain, drizzle, and fog out there. I don't really see a break over the next week, but we'll get into the details how much more rain is on the way.
Welcome back. 8-year-old Carly Green has raised more than $1,600 to help people experiencing homelessness in her community. Now, she started a fundraiser called Carly's Kilometers for Kindness after she saw a man panhandling in a major intersection. Carly hoped to raise $100 for a community health Healthcare Center in St. John's by running 10 kilometers. But her mom says that distance was a little bit too far for the 8-year-old. So on Thursday, Carly ran 5 kilometers and raised a lot more money than expected. But Thelma Kareen says this isn't the only act of kindness her daughter has done. This winter, she made her mom stop the car so she could give money she earned shoveling to a man on the street.
Originally, I wouldn't stop to let her give him the money, but she was pretty upset about it. She said that she felt that he needed it more than she did. So I pulled over and we gave him the couple of dollars that she had earned.
I feel bad for the people who are just out in the rain and the cold and snow, and they just have to sit on the road.
So sweet. Carly says the run was hard, but she's happy she completed it.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Oh, that's so nice.
It was
nice little
nice.
fundraiser, and I guess it's not really great running weather out there right now, or at all for the past few days. I couldn't believe how much rain was coming down. Every time I looked out the window, it was just raining.
Yeah, there's been a lot of rain and fog as well. And the fog has been eating away at the snowbanks over the last couple of weeks. And I've been getting a lot of questions about that. And so we decided to dip into what we talked about last year. And we did a little video for you. So take a look at that. In spring, when warm, humid air moves in and sits over the cold snow, it causes the surrounding air temperature to lower and the tiny parcels of air cool and condense, which creates a cloud close to the ground. That's the fog. That process releases heat, and because humid air is a better conductor of heat, that melts the snow quickly. Yeah, so certainly seeing lots of fog in the forecast for the past couple of days. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of snow left for the fog to eat, but it's out there now. And we saw some temperatures today cool, around 3 degrees, 4 through Badger. And then the warm spot, again, the Rec House at double digits today at 11 degrees. And then same for along the Strait as well, saw double-digit temperatures. Still sitting pretty nice, 8 degrees in, along the Strait. And we've got those temperatures into the single digits again across the island. Now taking a look at the setup, looks exactly the same that it did yesterday, last week rather. We're still in that blocking pattern with that high pressure to the north and the area of low pressure to the south, bringing lots of rain across the province, at least across the eastern and northeastern portions of the province. Today, you can still see some of that heavier rain making its way, mainly for the northern Avalon at this point, and then through areas like Clarenville, and then heading further north as well. That's generally going to be the story as we head through the overnight tonight. So another rainfall warning was issued earlier today, and that's from essentially Green Bay, White Bay, all the way through to the metro area and eastern areas of the Avalon. And then a wind warning for the entire southern portion of the island. That's going to be for tomorrow afternoon. The winds are going to ramp up, and they're already starting to ramp up for eastern areas. We're seeing gusts upwards of 50, 60 kilometers per hour, and that rain, like I said, is going to continue as we head through the overnight tonight. The heaviest rain will fall from essentially Clarenville through to the eastern areas of the Avalon overnight tonight, and then we'll start to see a little bit of snow in the mix. The rain will taper to flurries or even some freezing drizzle from Green Bay, White Bay through to Grand Falls, Windsor as we head into the early morning hours. So here's where our temperatures will be sitting. 2 to 5 degrees across the board, and again, those winds out of the east are going to ramp up. 50 to 70 kilometer per hour gusts expected overnight tonight. And then along the west coast, you're looking at northeasterlies about 30 to 50, and the potential for some flurries in the higher elevations will stick around as well. Across Labrador, you're looking at generally cloudy skies. That rain or freezing drizzle will continue for southeastern portions of the Big Land. Your winds generally not much to speak of, 10 to 15 kilometers per hour, really across the board, with temperatures into the minus single digits. Taking a look at the rainfall, this is through tomorrow morning, so expect another 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. Some areas could see a little bit more. And then as we head through the day tomorrow, that rain is going to continue. We're going to see the potential for some heavier rain for the southern portion of the Avalon as well as the Burin Peninsula. Anticipating we'll likely see a rainfall warning be issued into the morning hours, but overall back to drizzle for the most part for most of us. Maybe a few flurries in the mix again from Green Bay, White Bay through to Central, and then not a whole lot happening across Labrador. You're looking at some sunny skies through the afternoon, and then eventually that rain will taper off for the island as that area of low pressure moves a little bit further south, and we may even see some clearing through Central. So adding on that rainfall through to Wednesday morning for the southern areas, you can see we could see in excess of 20 to 30 millimeters of rain before that's all said and done, even 30 to 50 for extreme southwestern portions. Southeastern portions. Taking a look at the temperatures for tomorrow, not a whole lot different, 3 to 8 degrees. Southwestern, we'll see the warmest temperatures. Port aux Basques, you may even see a few periods of sun as well, but those winds are going to be strong again, 50 to 80 kilometers per hour. Some sunshine for most of Labrador. Lab City, you should get up to about 6 degrees tomorrow. Not a whole lot of wind either. Tomorrow may see a few flurries in the morning for the southeast, but then it should clear out into the afternoon, but your temperatures will still be a little bit cool, 1 to 2 degrees as your afternoon high. So as we head through the week, still looking at that same pattern continuing. I'll get into those details coming up.
So I'd say right now, we don't have a clear indication that there is broader transmission within the community.
Up next, Western Health is searching for the source of a case of COVID. We'll talk about who's getting tested. On the West Coast, they're doing more testing as they try and figure out the source of a case of COVID-19. Testing sites were set up in Meadows and Corner Brook. So what are they looking for? Well, Dr. Monica Dutt is the Medical Officer of Health for Western Health, and she joins us now. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So how concerning is it for you that there is a case that now for several days you don't know the source of?
So yeah, any case where we can't immediately say, there's a clear connection to someone else who's positive or to travel, that does cause some concern. But each day we're kind of gathering more information and doing more of an investigation. And as part of our investigation, as you just said, we are doing some community testing. There's a slight indication that there could possibly be that someone had acquired the infection within the community. It's still, not completely clear, but we wanted to be proactive. We wanted to try to detect anything early on if we could, which is why we've decided to do this testing.
Now, those testing appointments filled up pretty quickly. You put out the call last night, and by this morning you said there was no room. Why not expand testing capability if there are more people out there who want to get tested? Wouldn't that give you more information to work with?
Yeah, so initially we realized we're not going to be able to test the entire population in that area. So we knew we were going to get a sample of people in the community. And yes, it did fill extremely quickly. So thank you very much to people who did book their appointments. What we decided to do is take each day as it goes. So we booked 3 days of testing. We are going to assess the information each day as we do the testing, get the results. We have both the rapid antigen testing, which will give us some immediate information, as well as the testing that we're also sending to St. John's, to the public health lab, that will give us a confirmed test result. So we will take that information as well as other parts of the investigation. And if we need to expand, if we need to target certain areas or groups or need to extend the days of testing, we will absolutely do that. But for now, we're going to take this snapshot of these areas where we've decided to do the testing and gather that information and then decide.
Last weekend was Easter, where we saw a lot of people traveling either to go and see family, or they might have been on the West Coast going skiing, for example. What about people who don't live in the area but may have been in the area in the days leading up to this positive case? Should they get tested?
So at this point, again, there isn't an indication yet that we need to go beyond the residents in the community. If, again, and we find anything that shows that there was a risk within the community that may be applicable to people who had traveled in, we would expand that testing. But right now, we haven't seen that. We're kind of doing it in layers. So we want to do the people, at least some of the people within those communities initially. And if we get a signal from that, then we can expand. But right now, there hasn't been anything to show that we do need to go beyond that at this moment.
Okay, Dr. Dutt, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, in national COVID news, business owners in Montreal's Old Port are cleaning up today following Sunday night's anti-curfew protest that turned violent.
It is not acceptable. People are allowed to protest. It's their right. Do it right. Don't attack people that are already suffering, that are dealing with the COVID, just like they are, those protesters. But the difference is their job is now even more in danger because some people decided to break their windows, which is ridiculous. It's stupid.
Montreal police have arrested at least 7 people and handed out more than 100 tickets to people for breaking public health rules. Hundreds had gathered in the tourist district defying an 8 p.m. curfew that came into effect yesterday in Montreal and Laval. It began as a relatively calm but large crowd of young people dancing to loud music and lighting fireworks, but that changed when some protesters lit a garbage fire and others started damaging storefronts, prompting riot police to fire tear gas to break up the crowd. Well, students in Ontario won't be heading back to class after their spring break this week. Elementary and secondary schools across the province will only be providing remote learning, a move that will affect about 1.5 million students. The Premier made the announcement today.
We know that the more COVID spreads in our communities, the more likely it is to get into the schools, and that would create massive problems for all of us down the road. My friends, no one wants our kids in school more than I do. That's where they belong. But with COVID spreading like wildfire, with these deadly variants taking hold in Ontario, we simply can't be too cautious right now. We have to be proactive.
More people are heading outdoors now that spring is here, at least when it stops raining, but experts are warning about what else is in the air. Growing COVID-19 cases and variants may be pushing up the risk of outdoor transmission of the coronavirus. But as Christine Burak reports, those warnings come with some recommendations for how to still enjoy the weather outside.
You're still far less likely to catch this virus outdoors, but experts insist variants of concern appear to be raising the risk everywhere.
It's possible that there's now more virus in the air, or it's possible that it takes fewer of those viruses to make you sick.
Lindsay Marr is one of the world's top experts studying airborne transmission of viruses. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control recently confirmed something Marr predicted. The chances of getting infected by touching a surface is generally less than 1 in 10,000, meaning most people get this virus by breathing it in.
The evidence just keeps piling up in favor of the importance of aerosol transmission.
So this is like me breathing. As we're talking, it sort of represents my droplets.
And if you were to put that in front of your mouth.
Jeffrey Siegel studies air quality. He says fresh air is the best way to dilute a virus, but that meter is picking up aerosols or tiny particles that could carry the virus.
You can really see how it's jumping around too, and that's the wind, right? That's the thing about outdoors. It changes in an instant.
Alberta recently reported outdoor infections. Similarly, a Chinese study documented the spread between two men talking face-to-face for at least 15 minutes. And a 40-person picnic in Ottawa last year led to 27 infections.
Just going outdoors, people should feel good about reducing the risk. But that doesn't mean that the risk goes to zero.
And while many worry about passing strangers,
like if you jog past someone, that's not going to transmit the virus.
Doctors say people we know pose bigger risks because we tend to get closer for longer periods of time.
In general, with more contagious variants, there is going to be less room for error if people are lax with the common sense recommendations.
Which is why, even outside, the best advice is to keep your distance or mask up. Christine Burak, CBC News, Toronto.
It really depends on how many districts are being challenged.
A constitutional lawyer specializing in parliamentary law weighs in on the NDP's court challenge to overturn the results of our provincial election. That's coming up next. Well, as we heard earlier in the show, the NDP has filed a court application to overturn the results of the entire provincial election based on alleged voting irregularities. So what could happen if the application is successful? Lyle Skinner is a constitutional lawyer who specializes in parliamentary law, and he joins me now from Ottawa. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn.
So, Mr. Skinner, you've been following the strange twists and turns of our provincial election. Many people were speculating that this kind of lawsuit may be coming. What do you make of this latest court challenge?
Well, it's I guess what's important for viewers to know that this is just the next step in the in the electoral process, right? This is part of the accountability mechanism to, if anybody has any questions, if the election was conducted in a fair manner, that they can go to the court and ask the court to adjudicate that.
So can the results of an entire election be deemed void based on just one court challenge?
That's a good question. It depends on what you're exactly relying upon, right? The Elections Act itself is quite clear that individuals who have standing, so that would be a candidate or a voter in a particular district, can bring an application forward for an irregularity. In this case, however, what it appears that the applicant is doing is perhaps using a charter argument to attempt to void all 40 districts through one application. Whether or not that will be successful or not is for a judge to determine before they would consider the merits of the particular case as it may be.
Mm-hmm. And what could happen if the challenge is successful? Could it trigger a new election? What would happen to the legislature? Like, what would be the ripple effects of a successful challenge here?
Sure. So it's if the results are voided solely for one district, it can still have a significant impact, right? There would be a new election issued for that district, and then potentially, if the incumbent is not returned, there would be a cabinet shuffle, but also there would be some procedural impacts on voting in certain committees. However, if all the results of all 40 districts are voided, a new second election would be issued, but that's different than a regular general election, because remember that the premier at any time can advise the lieutenant governor to dissolve the assembly. So in this case, the assembly would still exist, it just wouldn't have any MHAs, which would be, from my research, somewhat unprecedented.
Mm-hmm. How likely do you think that would be, that it would play out that way and we would have to go to the polls again?
Well, it all depends on the number of individuals who feel that there was an irregularity that occurred in the election. Right. This is one application. There's 2 months since the day after ordinary polling day, in which individuals can bring forward applications. So it really depends on how many districts are being challenged. And again, even if there is only one or two, that it might affect the balance of power. And for example, if the government goes into a minority government situation, the premier is within his prerogative to make an appeal to Newfoundland and Labradorians and advise dissolution and commence an election in that way. So it doesn't have to again be through the legal process through all 40 districts. There's also a political constitutional avenue as well.
Is there any precedent for this kind of court application or for overturning results based on voting irregularities?
Yes, it's again an excellent question. There's a case from 1993 where in the district of Placentia, there were 55 voters who didn't have proper documentation with respect to making an oath. And that was more than the 21 vote difference between the candidate that won and the candidate that lost. And the court said that when a situation materially affects the results, such as that, that no other factors are really considered. It's that the irregularity could potentially affect the outcome. And so in that case, because there was no further evidence produced, the results were voided and a second election was occurred subsequent.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be very interesting to see what happens next. Lyle Skinner, thank you so much for your thoughts on this.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn.
Another deadly interaction between police and a black man sent protesters back into the streets near Minneapolis. Demonstrations flared in reaction to the shooting of 20-year-old Dante Wright. Riot police used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the crowds. Earlier in the day, officers were attempting to arrest Wright during a traffic stop when he was shot. Wright managed to get back into the car and drive off. He crashed with another vehicle several blocks away. Police say the shooting may have been an accident. The police officer involved may have drawn her gun during the struggle rather than her taser. Welcome back to Here and Now. 41 years ago today, Terry Fox was dipping his leg into the Atlantic Ocean.
He was preparing to set out on an iconic journey across Canada. Yeah, and that is the iconic image. Fox at Outer Cove Beach before starting his cross-country journey. From there, he went to St. John City Hall before running along Pitts Memorial Drive and then out of the city. Fox would make a 5,373 kilometer, make it 5,373 kilometers in 143 days.
His Marathon of Hope was cut short, but through the Terry Fox Foundation, his effort to raise money for cancer research continues to this day. On this day in 1980, Terry Fox spoke to CBC News about his goal. Take a look.
Terry, you're not going to be able to make very many miles a day. How long is it going to take you to run across the country?
Either September or October I'll get there. I hope to do between 30 and 40 miles in a day.
What's your final destination point?
Well, I'm going right across Vancouver Island, but I'm going to finish in Vancouver. What I'm going to do is when I get to something like Hope, I'm going to drive to the ferry, run across Vancouver Island, drive back to Hope, and then finish in Vancouver where I live.
You're pretty confident. You sound like there's no doubts in your mind at all that you're going to get there.
Well, I think if it's only up to me in my mind, I know I got a lot of positive attitude, and I think I can do it. You know, you never know what might happen. There could be something I can't. There's nothing I can possibly do to prevent happening, and maybe I won't make it. But if it's up to me, I think I can do it.
This is the whole attitude. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
Canada's one-legged marathon runner is in Halifax. Terry Fox is running across Canada trying to raise $1 million for cancer research. He calls his running style the Foxtrot. After 25 days in Newfoundland, Terry had raised $25,000. He lost his leg to cancer 3 years ago.
Okay, Ashley is back with a look at the long range. So how much longer will we have to deal with all of this RDF?
Well, we're going to see a little bit of a break on Wednesday from potentially the RDF, but we're still going to see some cloud cover. Let's take a look at the future tracker. A little bit of a ridge of high pressure is going to sink south, and that's going to keep things generally clear for most of Labrador and even the west coast as we head into the afternoon on Wednesday. We may see some clearing skies heading a little bit further south before sunset, but overall, we're still in that easterly flow, so thinking we'll probably still see some patchy drizzle, at least for areas facing the coast. As we head into Thursday, some cooler air working its way further south, so we're going to see the potential for a few flurries for the first half of the day up through Labrador. That'll work its way towards the island as we head into the afternoon on Thursday, but again, generally gray skies for most of us. Maybe a few peaks of sun in the southwest again through the afternoon on Thursday, but overall it is going to be unsettled as we continue to see that easterly flow for most areas. Taking a look at the temperatures for Wednesday, beautiful up through Labrador, 6 to 8 degrees, a little cooler in the north though. Nain, you're only sitting around 2 degrees. And then those temperatures that are sitting anywhere from 8 to 9 degrees for the west coast. And then as we head further east, those cooler temperatures will continue, only reaching a high near 3 degrees in St. John's. And again, I have that drizzle in there through the afternoon, but we may just see some cloudy skies through the day. For Thursday, temperatures a little bit cooler as well, so we're down to 2 to 3 degrees for most areas, keeping that potential maybe for a few flurries in the mix. Otherwise, we're looking at sunshine for the southwest and then into the cooler temperatures for Lab City down to 1 degree with the potential for some flurries in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. You're going to be sitting around 2 degrees. Over the next couple of days, maybe we'll see a little bit of a break from the precipitation as we head into Saturday, mainly cloudy skies, about 5 degrees, but temperatures, you know, moving from 0 to 5 through the week, so not too much in the way of movement. As far as central goes, you're looking at your temperatures climbing as we head into Saturday, probably a little bit more sunshine for you. Same thing for the west coast, with your temperature hovering around 8 degrees as we head into the weekend. Really, your temperature will be sitting between 6 and 8 degrees across the board. For eastern Labrador, some flurries by Thursday. Then by Friday and Saturday, we get back into that unsettled conditions with some rain in the forecast. And then for western Labrador, you're looking at flurries through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, some sunshine. I wanted to share this photo. It has been gray and misty. This has pretty much been the story for the past week and a half. Colleen shared that one from Burgess South. Thank you for that. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Wonderful.
That's about all you're going to enjoy these days. Some big waves.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.
Good night.